University of Arizona. And my name is Jiang Wu. I'm the director of the Center for Buddhist Studies. And this is our Ōbaku Yingen and the Lingyin Buddhist Studies lecture series. And today we have Dr. John Johnston, who is going to give us a talk on the Manpukuji. He is an art historian of Asian art, specializing in Buddhist painting, sculpture, and material culture. He has conducted field work in Buddhist temples in Bhutan, Thailand, China, and Japan. Recently, he got a grant from Japan Foundation and Ishibashi Foundation and stay as a guest monk at Manpukuji, Uji, Japan. And he is also the main organizer of our online exhibition about Ōbaku Yingen, because this year is the 350th year death anniversary of Yingen Ryuki. So we're very glad to have Dr. John Johnston here. And for today's event, it is both in person and online. And here I'm the host for this in-person event, but however, for online event, we have Dr. Robert Gordon. And Professor Robert Gordon is right now a research professor at our Freedom Center, and he just published a book on Buddhist architecture in America. So congratulations, Robert. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll say a few words on behalf of our online audience to greet Dr. John Johnston.
Yeah, well, let me just say that I am excited about Professor Johnston's or Dr. Johnston's talk. I'm a fellow art historian, and so I'm sure he's going to bring quite an interesting perspective to both the experience and the architecture and art of Manpukuji.
So, great.
Thank you.
So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. John Johnston. The topic of his talk is Manpukuji views from inside the main temple of the Obaku school of Zen. Please, Dr. Johnston.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Before beginning my talk today, I would like to thank Professor Jiang Wu, who you just heard from, director of the Center for Buddhist Studies here at the University of Arizona, for introducing me to the academic study of the Ōbaku school and encouraging my research on the visual arts of Ōbaku. I would also like to thank the Japan Foundation and Ishibashi Foundation for generously providing a fellowship that funded my study of Ōbaku art and culture at Manpukuji for 2 months from October to December last year. Sincere thanks also to the senior monks at Manpukuji who allowed me to serve as a guest monk and reside at Manpukuji during my research. And finally, thanks to my colleague, Dr. James Baskind, for helping arrange my project at Manpukuji. In today's talk, we will go on a virtual tour of Manpukuji, stopping at the major temples and viewing the sculptural works featured in those sacred spaces. I will also provide information on how these temples and objects are used in the ritual life of Manpukuji today. But first, a few words of historical background on Manpukuji. Manpukuji is named after Huangbo, the home temple of this form of Chan, or Zen practice in Fujian province, China. Manpukuji is located in the southern outskirts of Kyoto, and it is the chief temple of the Ōbaku Zen sect. In fact, the date of the founding of Manpukuji, 1661, is also recognized as the founding date of Ōbaku. The two are intrinsically linked. The founder of the Ōbaku school and Manpukuji is Yinyuan Longqi, or Yingen Ryuki, who lived 1592 to 1673. He is by far the most important figure in the history of Ōbaku and continues to exercise profound influence on activities at Manpukuji. Yingen arrived at Nagasaki in 1654 with 30 monks and artisans at the invitation of the Chinese community there. In 1659, Yingen was given permission to build a temple in Uji near Kyoto on land donated by Tokugawa shogun Ieyatsuna. The shogun not only provided land, but also provided funds for construction and carpenters from his administration. The land previously belonged to the Kanoe family and was swapped by government arrangement for a parcel north of Osaka. And here we see an image taken from the back of Manpukuji, looking out on the rooftops of the temples. And in the middle ground is Ōbaku town and Uji, and then to the distance is the Uji River. And the slide to the right is the most famous set of sculptures, which I will discuss soon in Manpukuji. Manpukuji began construction in 1661. In 1662, it was an active year for architecture and sculpture. In 1663, they had the opening ceremony for Manpukuji. In 1664, Ingen retired from the abbotship, and Mokuan, the second patriarch and a brilliant administrator, assumed those duties. And 8 years later, in 1669, construction was completed of Manpukuji. Manpukuji is also known colloquially as the Chinese temple, and it brought a foreign sense of Buddhist culture and practice to a Japan that was completely closed to foreign travel into or from the country. At the time of Ingen's arrival from China, Japan was culturally very isolated. Early visitors to Manpukuji, and even today, come to the temples to experience foreignness, particularly the different material culture. For over 100 years, the abbots of Manpukuji were Chinese, though Japanese monks were instrumental in the school's spread and development. Manpukuji served as an inspiration to architects and artists. They could view Chinese styles and approaches different from isolated Edo Japan. Sculpture, which is mainly in late Ming Dynasty style, as an important part of the visual atmosphere of Manpukuji temples and was particularly influential. Manpukuji and the Ōbaku school influenced developments in temple art and architecture throughout Japan. To quote Alex Kerr, quote, "Manpukuji never abandoned its Chinese identity. It is the single most successful and long-lasting venture initiated by foreigners in Japanese history." 23 buildings in Manpukuji are designated as important national cultural properties. Many early buildings feature teak from Thailand or Burma and carved metal bases for columns imported from Beijing. The buildings are in excellent condition and generally are unchanged architecturally and feature original sculpture and furnishings. A large landslide in 1928 is the only significant event that damaged Manpukuji, but the primary buildings were not affected. The large campus of about 22 acres is organized along a central north-south axis, with various temples of roughly the same size placed on the east and west or right and left sides. Ingen designed Manpukuji layout with careful attention to feng shui, nestled as it is against mountains with a short plain leading to the Uji River. Manpukuji remains an active site of Ōbaku practice and monastic training. Unlike many other historical Buddhist sites in Kyoto, monks are visible, rituals are performed, and one enters into an atmosphere of a living Buddhist tradition rather than a lifeless tourist spot. However, the Ōbaku school has experienced decline in popularity in recent decades. The reasons for this are likely many and varied. At its peak, Manpukuji was home to about 50 resident monks. Now the number is about 15. Also at its peak, there were approximately 3,500 branch temples, but in the early 1990s, there were only 500 branch temples. And today, just 350 Ōbaku temples remain active. There are approximately 350,000 lay followers of Ōbaku. I am shown here wearing a samue, which is a two-piece robe that is a fairly recent development. It's just over 100 years old. And that robe can be worn by lay people as well as monks belonging to various Zen lineages. And the black color denotes monk in training. This is a modern map from Manpukuji showing the number of buildings, the many buildings, and how it's positioned against mountains and on this short, flat plain. We will use a map of Manpukuji from the early 18th century, circa 1705, as our guide. It provides a bird's eye view of the extensive buildings and grounds. The map is in the Manpukuji collection and is designated an important cultural property. Let's now enter Manpukuji at Somon, or the General Gate. You'll see that in the red box. So the red boxes will denote our location as we travel through Manpukuji. Somon, the general or overall gate, was first built in 1661 and rebuilt in 1693. The gate is also called the Chinese Gate, as it is in Chinese style, with a raised middle roof and lower roofs at left and right. Like all the buildings I will show you today, it is designated by the Japanese government as an important national cultural property. The gate, as with the overall layout of Manpukuji, takes feng shui carefully into consideration. On the back of the gate is a circle representing a symbolic mirror, keeping powerful spiritual energy reflected back within Manpukuji. Straight ahead from the gate is a wall, known as a shadow wall, that functions in feng shui as a means of absorbing negative energy that moves through the main gate. This gate is securely locked at dusk or after a special event. After taking the zigzag path, we come to what is considered the main gate, Sanmon, or Mountain Gate. The three-tiered gate is in Chinese style. Built in 1678, it now houses the ticket booth. All visitors pass through this and the aforementioned General Gate. Above the gate is a signboard with the characters for Manpukuji, also the same characters for Wanfu Si, the home temple of Ōbaku in Fujian, China. The calligraphy is by Yinyan, a noted calligrapher, as well as a poet and, of course, a religious master. Signboards carved with calligraphy are a prominent feature of Manpukuji. The carved signboards are based on writing on paper by the original calligrapher. The calligraphy of the first two patriarchs of Ōbaku, Yinyan and Mokuwan, are the most popular for the signboards at Manpukuji. In front of the gate is a forbidden stone, Kinpai Seki, or Kinpai stone. This stone states that meat and alcohol are not allowed past the gate. There are many such stones outside of Zen Buddhist temples in Japan, and this is a contribution of Ōbaku. Monks who returned to Manpukuji after drinking or eating meat would have been punished, so this stone serves as a warning. The printed image of the stone is from a text known as Ōbaku Shingi, dating to 1672, that I'll return to later. After passing through this gate, we are now moving into Manpukuji proper. About 20 yards ahead and to the left is a well-groomed path leading to one of the most sacred spaces of Manpukuji, Kaisan-do, or the Founder's Hall. Note the diamond-patterned stone tiles at the center of the path. Only the abbot can walk on these stones in the center of the path. This harkens back to a Chinese custom. For example, only the emperor can walk on the central dragon path in the Forbidden City. The abbot is the highest ranking figure at Manpukuji, and the center of the path is reserved for him. Both monks and Ōbaku lay people observe this custom. If you want to appear like a real follower of Ōbaku, don't walk on the diamond-shaped stones. Walk on the sides of the path. Now we're moving through this small gate, and we see ahead of us the stately Kaishan Tang, or Kaisan-do, the Founder's Hall. Cracked ice stones create a wide walkway through a raked pebble forecourt that leads to the temple. Yinyan's memorial tablet and a sculptural portrait are kept at Kaisan-do. Kaisando shares architectural features with the main hall, which we will come to, such as the double eaves and half doors at the front inscribed with peaches. Daily duties are attended to by a monk assigned to Kaisando. These assignments for monks with various duties are rotated every 3 years. This temple is devoted to Ingen, the founder and most revered figure in Ōbaku history. Kaisando was established in 1675, 2 years after Ingen's death. Kaisando is one of the larger ritual spaces at Manpukuji. In a small room behind the altar is a wooden sculptural portrait. This is the inside, the main room in Kaisando, and we're facing the altar. And then behind the altar, you see these yellow curtains. And behind the yellow curtains is this figure. This sculptural portrait of Ingen was made in 1663 to celebrate the master's 70th birthday. It is approximately 5 feet 3 inches in height and is positioned to look out from Kaisando over the temple and across the large forecourt. Real hair was used for the head, including the beard. Wrinkles carved in detail create a realistic image. The realism of the sculpture recalls realistic images of painted portraits of Ōbaku masters that are themselves based on Chinese traditions of ancestor paintings. This sculpture was made by Fan Daosheng. Well, here's details, and you can see the hair and the high degree of realism of this sculptural portrait carved in wood. The sculpture was carved by master sculptor Fan Daosheng, the most important sculptor of the Ōbaku school. Fan Daosheng made the most treasured images at Manpukuji and also influenced developments in Japanese Buddhist sculpture. Fan Daosheng is an important figure in today's lecture, so just some background about Fan Daosheng. He lived 1635 to 1670. He's the most gifted sculptor of the Ōbaku tradition. Fan Daosheng was born to a literati family in Fujian. His father was Fan Jue, a Ming loyalist who moved to Hoi An, Vietnam, to escape persecution from Qing dynasty forces. And by the way, Fan Daosheng is known in Japan by his Japanese name as Hondo Sei. Fan Daosheng was invited to Japan by the abbot of Fukusaiji Temple, a Chinese temple in Nagasaki. Though very young, he must have been already a noted artist. He arrived in Nagasaki in 1660 at just age 25 or 26 and was resident at Fukusaiji and Kofukuji temples. He created many sculptures in Nagasaki before arriving in Manpukuji in 1663. Indeed, he is thought to have carved a number of images for Manpukuji while still resident in Nagasaki and had the sculptures shipped to Kyoto. Ingen asked Fan Daosheng to make images of Avalokiteshvara, or Kannon, Idaten, Bodhidharma, and Huangbo. Fan Daosheng is credited with creating 27 figural sculptures for Manpukuji. Fan Daosheng only stayed in Manpukuji for 3 or 4 years, so it is unlikely he could have carved all the works attributed to him. He likely had a team of assistants, some of whom continued to work in his style in his absence. Fan Daosheng's studio in Nagasaki was also in this temple, Fukusaiji. And this is a historical photograph of Fukusaiji, and many of the images shown within Fukusaiji were made by Fan Daosheng. The temple and the images that they contained were destroyed by a fire caused by the atomic bombing of Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. Fan Daosheng was an accomplished painter as well as sculptor. Here are a few works by Fan: an Amitabha triad from 1664, with calligraphy by another artist, a Chinese monk. All of the red you see there is painted in human blood. And this work is in the Horin Temple collection in Kyoto. Also a painting of Guandi, the popular Chinese religious figure, painted by Fan Daosheng in 1664, and at Shofukuji in Nagasaki. And the calligraphy there is a poem that Fan Daosheng wrote about his arrival to Manpukuji and expressing his delight and joy of being in Manpukuji. And the poem is now in the collection of Manpukuji. Returning to Kaisan-do, or the Founders Hall, it is the site of ritual remembrance for Ingen on the 1st and 15th of every month at 10 a.m., presided over by the abbot and attended by monks of the temple. This ritual, known as Kaisan-ji, features chanting and sutra recitation, along with burning incense at the main altar and in front of the wooden portrait we just saw. Two larger rituals that are attended by Manpukuji monks and monks from other Ōbaku temples are held on April 3rd, the death anniversary of Ingen, and November 4th, his birth anniversary. Every 50 years, a major ritual is held on Ingen's death anniversary. Last year was the 350th anniversary of Ingen's death, so the ritual was held for just the 7th time. Here are a few images from the birth anniversary ritual on November 4th, which I attended. And this is a ritual procession with the abbot and two attendants walking in towards Kaisan-do. And here is the abbot, Abbot Kondo, performing a ritual in front of the altar. And you can see very elaborate offerings on the altar, and monks in various color robes, and the robes indicate their rank. And here is the abbot, Abbot Kondo Osho, joined by Kimura Osho and Hosen Osho on their ceremonial walk after the special ritual. If we walk straight ahead from the main gate along the central axis and up a set of stairs, we encounter Tenonden, the Hall of Heavenly Kings, built in 1668. And here you can see the steep stairs. This is the first main building that most people encounter on their visit to Manpukuji. And this is a cloisonné tripod censer in the style of the 18th century Qianlong period. And many people burn sandalwood incense from China in this censer and pay respects to the main image. And here I am at the front of Tenonden with the Venerable Yakushiji Kanho, a monk singer with over 4 million YouTube views, who was commissioned by University of Arizona Center for Buddhist Studies for an amazing concert that will be released on February 4th. At the entrance of Tenonden, one sees a sculpture of Budai, or Hotei in Japanese. A historical monk in China, Hotei came to represent Maitreya, the future Buddha. The smiling, rotund Buddha with characteristic cloth bag faces south towards the Sanmon Gate. Hotei is associated with good luck, and for most visitors, this is the place where they make their wishes. The figure was carved by Fan Daosheng in 1663. This Maitreya Buddha is said to be one of the luckiest images in all of Kyoto. A number of staff members pay respect to this image every morning. Inside Tenonden are the 4 heavenly kings for whom the temple is named. Each of these imposing figures are about 7 foot 3 inches in height and were carved in 1674. The heavenly king figures were made possible by donations from Ōbaku followers in Ise Prefecture. The heavenly kings were made by Japanese sculptors based in Kyoto, but an attempt was made to follow Ming Chinese style, such as the decorative patterns on the clothing and armor and looser garments than normally found in Japanese figural sculpture of the period. 2 heavenly kings are placed on either side of the small temple. They can be identified by the implements or attributes that they are holding. Each king is associated with a direction. In order of encounter, if you enter Tennon-den on the left and circumambulate in clockwise fashion, we have Darastra or Jiko-kuten, the guardian of the east, holding a flaming jewel. Virudaka or Zochoten, the guardian of the south, brandishing a sword and a spear. And on the other side of the room, Virupaksha or Komokuten, associated with the west, a lasso, there he is. A lasso is his defining attribute. And finally, Vaishravana or Tamoten. He's associated with the north. He holds a small stupa or Buddhist reliquary, and he is chief of the 4 kings. Behind the figure of the laughing Maitreya Buddha, and also with the heavenly kings on both sides, is Ida Ten, Weito in Chinese, or Skanda in Sanskrit. Ida Ten is considered a guardian of Buddhist monasteries, shown as a young man, fully clad in armor, with the helmet of a general and a sword. This is all consistent with Chinese iconography. Ida Ten is a swift-footed deity, a great runner, with a reputation of preventing robberies, based on an ancient story of protecting the Buddha's relics from thieves. Images of Ida Ten are most frequently found in storerooms and dining halls in monasteries. Ida Ten is situated so that he looks out from the back of Tennon-den on the central axis and watches over Dayu Hoden, the main temple of Manpukuji, which we will come to in a minute. There may be some confusion about the Ida Ten image now on view in Tennon-den. The current image, which is on the left, was brought to Manpukuji from China in 1705. The original figure of Ida Ten, on the right, was carved by Fan Daosheng in 1662, possibly in Nagasaki, and is slightly shorter at about 4 feet 1 inch. The Fan Daosheng Ida Ten is now kept in the temple treasure house, or Bunkaden, though it is sometimes loaned to major museum exhibitions. Ida Ten was a favorite subject of Fan Daosheng. We see here a painting of Ida Ten by Fan and a sculpture by him that is kept at Kofukuji Temple in Nagasaki. It appears that the flowing scarf that forms something like a halo and creates a sense of movement has now been damaged in the Kofukuji image in recent years. Leaving the Hall of Heavenly Kings, we walk to the left under covered walkways and turn northwards past the belfry or bell tower, which is now in disuse. It is actually used for storage. And we reach the Hall of Ancestors, or Shoshido. Shoshido was built in 1669 and features a large image, and here's an outside view of this small temple, and features a large image of Bodhidharma, or Damo in Chinese, or Daruma in Japanese, the legendary figure who brought Chan or Zen from India to China. Shoshido is closed to the public, but you have a partial view of the Bodhidharma sculpture through the screens at the front. The Bodhidharma image was made in 1663 by Fan Daosheng and is 5 feet 5 inches in height. The image was originally totally painted in gold, but only the underlying vermilion lacquer is apparent, except in a few places, as around the eyes and mouth, where you can still see the gold. Bodhidharma is shown with 2 prominent front teeth, a style of representation found in paintings of this period. The mortuary tablets of all the successive chief priests of the Ōbaku school, up to the 57th generation, are enshrined in this room. This small hall is thus a site for paying respects to the lineage of Ōbaku patriarchs, connected all the way back to Bodhidharma. The primary images match the meaning or purposes of the temples. Walking further up the walkway, we encounter one of the most important spaces in Manpukuji, the Zendo, or meditation hall. This is a space that is closed to visitors, but an active site of Buddhist practice for the monks. Zendo is one of the early buildings at Manpukuji. Here's an outside view of the Zendo. The primary image in the Zendo is a white-robed Guanyin, or Canon. It was made by Fan Daosheng in 1662. The Guanyin figure was likely made in Nagasaki and transported to Manpukuji. This Canon sculpture, or Guanyin sculpture, is thought to be the first image enshrined at Manpukuji. The sculpture is said to contain a letter from Ingen's mother, demonstrating Ingen's filial piety. While the Guanyin image measures just 5 feet 1 inches in height, it appears much larger as it sits on a very tall base, and viewers are quite close to the image in the Zendo. Canon images in the Ōbaku context reflect the insubstantial nature of the senses, rather than being a subject for beseeching miracles or for intercession in one's life. This is the canon of the Heart Sutra, rather than miracle tales. The two attendants to Guanyin, you can see here, and here are images of this very beautiful, graceful image of Guanyin by Fan Daosheng, sitting on a double lotus base. It's very hard to get such a clear view in the Zendo. The Zendo is quite a dark space, so these images really reveal the space. In the Zendo, the Guanyin or Canon image is flanked by two attendants. They are Sudana, or Shansai in Chinese, and Long Nu, or the Dragon Girl, Nagakanya in Sanskrit. So this is a Chinese iconographic grouping of Canon with Sudana and with the Long Nu, or Dragon Girl. And I'm sorry, I don't have great photographs of these two images, but they are both made by Fan Daosheng and are really very graceful images. To the right of Canon Guanyin is Sudana. Sudana is famous for his journey that took him to 53 different teachers while he was seeking enlightenment, which was the focus of his life. So the journey of Sudana is contained within the Avatamsaka Sutra. And finally, he gained enlightenment with the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. And to the left is the Dragon Girl. She reached nirvana quickly at just the age of 8 years old, so she was a prodigy. And Sudana and the Dragon Girl are considered both good models of Buddhist training and dedication to the path to enlightenment and rapid accomplishment. So these would be considered very appropriate in the meditation hall. The Zendo has two raised platforms to the east and west sides, facing each other across the room, upon which monks sit for meditation. The higher ranked monks sit on the left, and the lower ranked and student monks sit on the right, a lesson I learned the hard way when I sat in the senior monks' spot one morning. It was quickly corrected. The raised platform design of this Zendo influenced other Zen temples, including Myoshinji in Kyoto, a Rinzai temple which was home to both advocates and critics of the Ōbaku school. You'll see here the monk in charge carrying a long stick, which is a long flat stick, which is used for hitting monks, particularly when they fall asleep, as punishment. So one can also request to be hit by the stick by putting your hands together at the palms and giving a slight bow. And you're hit 3 times on each side of your spine. So I came to recognize the pop, 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 pop sound. I knew someone had fallen asleep. While hitting was once a hallmark of Ōbaku practice, it is now confined completely, as far as I can see, to the monks who fall asleep during meditation. The stick is also used to help correct meditation posture. One's back and neck should be as straight as the stick. And these images are from a French text in 1956. This recalls the words of Ingen, who said, "With a wild blow from my stick, I will show who will live and who will die. And with a fierce shout, I will show who is a dragon and who is a snake." Now I'd like to show you the monks in training area, which, as you see, is not on this early map. This is a relatively new part of Manpukuji. And this is where I stayed as a guest monk. This is the view from my room of the bell tower and the ancestral hall. A bit about the schedule. Typically, the monks in training, and there were only a few of us, wake up between 3:30 and 4 in the morning. By 4:30, it's morning patrol that requires opening the temples and sweeping. At 5 a.m., there's chanting in the main hall. From 5:30 to 6:15, there's meditation in the Zendo, which I just showed you. From 6:15 to 7, there's raking and other kinds of yard work. I became an expert with these primitive rakes. And then from 7 to 7:15, a very strict and silent breakfast. And then we were free until 8:30 in the morning, until more work and duties were assigned. And I, as a researcher, did my work in art history for most of the day. And then I rejoined the monks in training for the evening meditation and chanting, which concluded at 9 p.m. And here's a view. As you can see, this is in Japanese style, unlike the other buildings, which I've shown you that are very much in Chinese style. So these are the quarters for the monks in training. And in this space, there are classrooms and there's a space for meditation. This is my room. It was small and spare, no table or chair or anything like that, but I got a futon to sleep on. And here are the 3 monks in training that I did my studies with. They're my monkly duties. And I've gained a lot of respect for these monks. They're very hardworking and very dedicated. Their training lasts 1 to 3 years. It's not a set training. The education master, a senior monk, determines when they've completed their training. They start their training as a level 3 monk. And at the end of the training, they're level 8. And at level 8, you can become an abbot of any Ōbaku monastery. And I also want to add that I told you a bit about my daily schedule, but I found that there's great variation in the daily schedules. There are a lot of different rituals and duties. So one of the things that surprised me about the monastic life was how varied their daily schedules are. And here I am with the monks in training. And the monks who go in training together really become bonded. Oftentimes they're lifelong friends. They keep up with each other's careers as monks. Now we're moving to the main hall, the Great Hero's Treasure Hall, or Daiyu Hoden. And you can see it's along the central axis. We're back in the middle of the central axis. In front of the Daiyu Hoden is a moon platform covered in small stones with a flat stone in the center. This is used for special events. Traditionally, this moon viewing platform is the site of repentance or punishment for monks that don't follow monastic rules, such as consuming meat or alcohol. They would burn incense and recite prayers while kneeling on the stone. And here's an image of a group of tea ceremony followers, sencha, the specialty of Obaku, with the abbot. So there'll be special events that are held in front of Daiyu Hoden on this moon platform. Daiyu Hoden, which was established in 1668, is the largest temple in Manpukuji and is constructed of imported teak. Chinese architectural elements include 2 circular windows that represent the sun and the moon, and high railings. Peaches carved on the front doors, or half doors, are associated with Chinese popular beliefs and placed to ward off negative forces. The teak is from Thailand or possibly Burma and was donated by the Edo imperial government and a wealthy local merchant that became a dedicated follower of Ingen. The principal image of Daiyu Hoden is of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. The seated Shakyamuni image was carved by Kyoto sculptor Huangbo in 1669. It's made of wood and is 8 feet 2 inches in height, making it the largest sculpture in Manpukuji. Another image, photos of the Shakyamuni sculpture. Shakyamuni is flanked by his attendants Ananda and Mahakasyapa. They can be told apart because Mahakasyapa has a more weathered face. Ananda and Kasyapa were carved in 1674 and are 6 feet 8 inches in height. They were made by artisans in a workshop in Kyoto with funds provided by Ōbaku followers from Ise Prefecture. Now we move to the most celebrated sculptures in Manpukuji by Fan Dao Sheng, his great masterpieces, the 18 Arhats, or Lohan in Chinese, or Rakan in Japanese. The 18 Arhats were carved in 1663 and 1664. The Arhats are shown as highly varied figures, some very intense, even emotionally overwrought, while others appear very peaceful and meditative. They are shown in different poses and holding different attributes. Each Arhat has a unique character and presence. They are varied and yet naturalistic. They range in height from about 3 feet 2 inches to 3 feet 5 inches. The Arhats are arranged on 2 platforms, 9 Arhats on each platform. The platforms are on 3 stepped platforms, measuring a total of 4 feet 6 inches in height. So there are the Arhats, and here is the stepped platforms. So you almost make eye contact with them as you walk around. You look up slightly to the Arhat images. These platforms run along the east and west sides of the main temple and are meant to be experienced while circumambulating in clockwise fashion. Let me show you a better picture of the Arhats here. So an interesting story that's really more like a rumor that's still going around Manpukuji has to do with when these Arhats were blessed and enshrined. So Mokuan, the second abbot, performed a very stately ritual, blessing these images. It's known as an eye-opening ceremony. And then going right behind him was Jifei Rui, or Sokuhi, who was a famous Ōbaku master. And he would punch each one of these Arhats in the face and yell, "This monk is already enlightened." So very kind of a Zen act between Mokuan and Sokui. We'll take a look at a few examples of the 18 Arhats. First is Gobaka, or Shubojia. He's seated peacefully in meditation, hands gently placed one upon the other. There's great attention to the robes. The chest is exposed, and the inner robe is gathered and tied at the abdomen. Here we have Pindola Bharajava, an Arhat holding a book. This Arhat was known for his psychic powers. And you see very fine attention to the garments, to the textiles. These were rendered with oyster shell plaster, powdered calcium carbonate mixed with water, and then with pigment and gold, which results in these images in raised relief. This is all original pigment and gold. Here's an image of Kalika leaning on a straightened right arm, his left hand grasping a small mala or prayer beads. He's in a casual pose with raised left leg bent at the knee, a modified posture of royal ease. And maybe my favorite image of the 18 Arhats, an image of Sabinda. So this Arhat attained enlightenment through Zazen, seated meditation. The waving robes and hood convey the intensity of advanced meditation. And here you have, you can see these amazing drapery folds. And here is the most famous of all images by Fan Daosheng, probably the most famous image of all Ōbaku sculptures. This is the Arhat Rahula, and he is shown opening his chest and revealing the Buddha within, the meaning being that we all contain the Buddha nature. Interestingly, Rahula was the son of the historical Buddha. So here you can see the Buddha being revealed by opening the chest. And this image is so popular that it even adorns a vending machine very close to the Dayu Hoden. So you can see an image on the side there of Itaten by Fan Daosheng, and the image of Rahula is positioned so that where there should be the head of the Buddha, that's where you get your change. So I think the designer had some fun with that image. And finally, this is an image of Bhadra, Arhat holding a raised ring with intense expression. And to the right is the last known work by Fan Daosheng. It's a painting of his masterworks. He did a painting of the 18 Arhats. The painting was done in Vietnam and sent to Manpukuji. It's dated 1675. And finally, an image during the nighttime from Manpukuji. When the temple is lit up at night, you walk past these windows and you see the image of a head and shoulders, and it feels very lifelike. So you think, who is in there? What am I missing? An important ritual that's going on? And then it dawns on you, this is a sculpture of the Arhats. Within Dayu Hoden is a memorial chapel as well. And I show this little memorial chapel to draw your attention to a figure of Amitabha Buddha, Amitofo. And interestingly and surprising to me, that Amitabha images are very rare in Ōbaku. Despite this interest in chanting and semi-Pure Land rituals, Amitabha is rarely represented. Okay, moving along, we come to the main temple and the final building along the central axis. So leaving the main temple, we come to the final building along the central axis. It's the Dharma Hall, or Hatto, built in 1662. And these Dharma halls are important buildings in all Zen monasteries. Here's an image of the Hatto. And within this hall is large calligraphy by Ingen adorning a signboard, which says Hatto or Fatang Dharma Hall. The words of the late Stephen Addis come to mind in viewing this calligraphy. He says, the Ōbaku calligraphy is bold and massive, yet remarkably fluent. It's a combination of dignity and spontaneity. There are no sculptural images in this hall. And leaving the Dharma Hall, next to the Dharma Hall is the abbot's quarters. And in this image on the right is the abbot, the current abbot of Manpukuji, Abbot Kondo, And I was very pleased to find out that he is a calligrapher. So many of the early abbots of Manpukuji were famous for their calligraphy. And it's wonderful to see that an abbot today is still a noted calligrapher, and he invited me into his calligraphy studio. We begin our walk back towards the main gate along the right side of the central axis and come upon the all-important Saido, or dining hall, built in 1668. The dining hall is used by monks for highly formal, structured meals, usually conducted in silence. The room is adorned with calligraphy plaques by Mokuan, the second patriarch. The only sculpture in this space is a very rare representation, that of Kinara. The image was carved by Fan Daosheng in 1662. It was created at the same time as the Itaten figure in the Tenonden. In its first 6 years, this image was enshrined in the Dharma Hall before being placed in the Saido. Seen in the context of the dining hall, Kinara is the deity of fire and watches over the meals of the monks. Kinara Bosatsu is one of the 8 guardians of Buddhism in the grouping called Hachi Busho. Kinara Bosatsu is enshrined in the back of the room and facing the front door as a protector. One must bow to Kinara upon stepping into the room. So as you walk into the dining room, you're meant to immediately bow to this image. A back door behind this image leads to the main kitchen area. Walking further down the walkway, we come to the Garando, or the Hall of Temple Protection. It was built at the same time in 1669 and is of the same size and is facing across the courtyard to the Hall of Ancestors that features the Bodhidharma image. So these are matching small temples. Here's an image of Garando, and the main image here is Huaguang Dadi, or Kako Bosatsu. It was made by Fan Daosheng in 1663. Huaguang, or Kako, is a monastery guardian that protects temples, particularly from natural disasters. Huaguang was originally a Taoist deity that became included in the Buddhist pantheon by at least the early Ming dynasty. And here we have some images, and you can identify Huaguang or Kako from the third eye in the middle of the forehead, and also the implement which is being held. This is a triangular weapon that is something like a boomerang. So Kako can throw the weapon and it will be returned. Those are the distinguishing iconographic attributes. And in front of Huaguang is an image of Guangdi, the warrior general deity associated with Taoism that is of particular interest to merchants given its connection to ensuring business success. Huaguang is frequently found in Ōbaku temples. There are also a few examples in Zen temples belonging to the Soto school, which shows an influence of the Ōbaku school. Huaguang was a favorite subject of Fan Daosheng. Extant works include this painting, which is now in Fukujuji Temple in Fukuoka Prefecture, and this sculpture of Huaguang in Kofukuji Temple in Nagasaki. Also found in the Garando are 2 protective figures made in Japan of undetermined date. One is Daikokuten, or the 3-faced Daikokuten, Sanmen Daikoku, which is based on the Buddhist figure of Mahakala, but is conflated with a Shinto deity and becomes a Japanese deity known for ensuring fortune and wealth. The 3-headed version, as we see here, protects the 3 Buddhist treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The mallet and the 3 heads are the significant attributes. To the right, we see seated Benzaiten. This is an 8-armed Benzaiten based on Sarasvati, a female Buddhist deity of music. Benzaiten is also one of the 7 gods of good fortune. Similarly, this figure becomes associated with Shinto deities. Special services are held in this temple in June and November. Garando is considered very important for the protection of Manpukuji, and the light is kept on overnight, or at least I never saw the light turned off. And now to the Bunkaden, which you can see is a much more recent date. So our final stop is the Bunkaden, or Cultural Treasury, founded in 1972 and built in conjunction with the 300th anniversary of the founding of Manpukuji. A small museum hosts exhibitions from the Bunkaden's vast holdings. The Bunkaden houses the most important library and repository of painting and calligraphy and texts of the Ōbaku school. I conducted my research daily at the Bunkaden under the able supervision of Tanaka Chisei, who is shown here, a very knowledgeable monk and scholar who focuses on the art and history of the Ōbaku school. He is the director of the Bunkaden. An important work in the Bunkaden is an original copy of the Ōbaku Shingi, or Ōbaku Rules of Purity, by Ingen and Mokuwan, and edited by Kosen. That is the 1st, 2nd, and 5th Manpukuji abbots, and dating to 1672. The text sets out many aspects of life in Manpukuji, including the daily schedule, the various jobs that monks perform, the ritual calendar, and unique aspects of Ōbaku monastic culture are all set forth in this text. I draw your attention to the pages now illustrating temple furnishings and instruments that are still in use today, such as the distinctive large hanging lantern, the large hanging bell, the drum and bell combination, which is used every morning in the chanting ceremony, here pictured in Daiyu Hoden. The wooden fish, or muyu or mokugyu, now common in Japanese Buddhist practice and popularized by Ōbaku. And this is a massive wooden fish. I don't think there may be no larger wooden fish than this example. The celestial cloud, or stylized rui shaped bronze gong, which is sounded for meals. So this is hanging outside the saido or dining hall. And occasionally this gong was rung while I was underneath it and walking to breakfast. And I can say it is very loud, very, very loud. You're striking the gong. And the fish drum, or hanpo, which announces the time of daily events. This is carved from a single piece of wood that has been hollowed out. Its symbolism is interesting. Fish never close their eyes. They're always awake and aware, which is appropriate for a Zen context. And in the mouth is not a jewel, as we might expect in Buddhist iconography, but a representation of the 3 poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, that are being spit out. So this current fish is actually the 3rd generation fish. The second one is in the Bunkaden collection and is almost worn out. So here is the, monk Hosen striking the wooden fish drum. And you also find the large wooden fish drums in Kofukuji in Nagasaki. So here I am pictured with the abbot of Kofukuji, and they actually have 2 fish. They have a male and a female fish. Even the flat sticks used for striking are illustrated in the Ōbaku Shingi. The Ōbaku Shingi illustrates continuity between the 1st generation of Ōbaku and culture in Manpukuji today. In conclusion, there is a danger of misunderstanding the past of Ōbaku based on the present culture and activities of the school at Manpukuji. Over the past 360 years, Ōbaku has surely changed, with many assuming a gradual Japanification of what was very much a late Ming Chan or Zen Chinese Buddhist culture. However, the cultural and religious conservatism often evident in Japan has helped preserve many aspects of original early Ōbaku throughout the centuries. The temple buildings and their contents, including the sculptures, are almost unchanged from the late 17th century. The daily schedule, the chanting and meditation program, and the roles fulfilled by monks are very similar to the early years of Ōbaku. As all monks in the Ōbaku school must receive training and ordination at Manpukuji, the temple has set the cultural expectations for Ōbaku Zen for centuries. Texts like the Ōbaku Shingi help reinforce early customs of the Ōbaku school. There is great reverence and a desire to maintain these traditions with monks at Manpukuji today. The Ōbaku school is a living tradition, though to some degree a tradition in decline. This form of late Ming Buddhist culture that has incorporated aspects of Japanese religious culture deserves to be better known and appreciated in the modern era. Thank you very much.